Hello and welcome to this deep dive into Sage CRM 2022 R2. This is designed for support professionals, and this is being recorded in the context of a training session delivered to colleagues in Sage working within the UKI territory. Hello to everyone. Well, I'm going to press on to look at these different messages and slides explaining what's going on inside here. We are coming up to release within the UKI, and we are going to be having our release date of 27th of September, the same day that the Global Sage CRM Summit is taking place. So this is very fortuitous. This is all about giving the maximum exposure to the release. We've got a clear theme within Sage CRM 2022 R2, and that is around simplification. So we have been looking at, in terms of the design philosophy of Sage CRM, as to where we need to go to be able to not just address the needs of customers immediately, but also the ability for our developers to move quickly in creating extensions to Sage CRM and creating features that have long legs because of the capacity to be able to be worked with for a long time based on the technological changes that are taking place. The focus of this release is in the central of the slide saying feature renewal. In practice, this means that we have been looking at how do we cope with the fact that we've working with technologies that are changing, working within a browser environment, because Sage CRM has a browser-based architecture that is changing as well. So you've got realities such as the ending of life for Internet Explorer and the move to the use of Edge and the use of Internet Explorer mode within Edge to allow certain features to continue. The plugins which enabled Outlook integration, and there are two forms of Outlook integration within Sage CRM. There was classic Outlook integration and light Outlook integration. The light Outlook integration was much more associated with the idea of dual use within the context of a integration with Exchange. But nevertheless, there were two plugins being used, and these plugins made use of technology such as ActiveX and direct calls to Internet Explorer. There is obviously a serious risk to businesses that depend on that, since the ending of life for Internet Explorer and the move to only Edge with Internet Explorer mode within Windows. So we took advantage of this as a moment in time to decide that what we would do is remove all idea of additional installations within the client, the installation of the browser-based plugins, and move to a simpler environment where all of the integration takes place within the context of Sage CRM, building on some of the other work that we had done to allow for secure integration with mail servers such as Exchange and Google Workspace. So that's something that I'm going to be talking about as the central part of today's session. But there are other changes that have taken place. So not only the new email and contact import feature, this replication, this replacement of the browser plugins, but we've also seen changes in the APIs. So we've extended the REST API to allow for some of the work that we wanted to do with the filing of emails, and that's become an easy thing for everyone to be able to use. We've also revised and done some standardization around password lengths and the management of passwords within the product. And we've also gone through a whole set of updates around customer cases as well. We've seen over 25 cases resolved. I think there were 27 in the end. We've gone through a series of refreshment of the interface as well. I'll be explaining that this is a journey that we are still going on. There is work that we have started in 2022 R2 that is going to continue into 2023 R1. But we've refreshed much of the material on the community, the user assistance videos, and some of the e-learning materials as well that we've been working with. So let's start by considering the brand changes. Sage CRM 2022 R2 is going to look a little different when people log on for the first time. We have taken some of the new standard fonts that are being used and made sure that they've applied. Now, the point about the font revisions for the main header of data and text in the screens is that in terms of design purposes, they are designed for clarity of reading. And you'll see that not so much in 2022 R2, but what will be coming down is there will be a much more severe approach to the design of the interface with much more concentration on readability within the screens and therefore accessibility for users as well. In terms of what's happened is obviously we've made changes to some of the icon sets and we've certainly made changes to the cascading style sheets and themes that are applied here. Around that, I think that if you understand that when people have problems associated with the new interface, it's likely to be a cascading problem, cascading style sheet on an upgraded system. What we did with this is that we have done a replacement. So it's not a choice that customers have on the upgrade. This is the branding change. They can decide during the course of upgrade not to take they can change the style sheet as they need to. There's enough material showing how to change the style sheet as well. In terms of some of the little things that we've done around the styles, this is going to continue with the other aspects of CRM, because at the moment the style sheet uplift does not include the mobile theme problem. I don't imagine there'll be too many problems around cascading style sheet changes here. So we're going to come now into looking at this main feature that has changed. So this is, if you like, the first thing. We talked about the branding first of all, because that's the thing that people will notice most when they come in to use Sage CRM. But I want to talk now about the feature that has replaced the use of the Outlook plugins. So this is all about importing contacts and email messages from Exchange Online. The simplification comes from there is no additional installations. It should be much easier for partners and support colleagues to be able to help customers. So you're not having to get any of the questions around the peculiarities of what's going on within inside CRM. You've got a single mechanism to look at to work out why an integration, why the calls aren't working. There's going to be further expansion of this in 2023 R1, but it does require quite a bit of work right now from system administrators in order to set this up, because a system administrator will need to set up the client ID and the feature for Sage CRM as their instance of Sage CRM as an application that has permission to use OAuth 2. And it is only applicable for Exchange Online, and we'll explain now how that's done. So our starting point is, if you're an administrator, you come into administration, you'll see underneath email and documents, you'll see this new option to be able to enter in OAuth 2 settings for importing contacts and emails. Now it's here that system administrators should be broadly familiar with this, because OAuth 2 is used in the context of other aspects of Sage CRM. So it's used not only for the new feature, but it's also used for Exchange integration itself. It's used for the internal email client, and it's also used for the advanced mail manager. Now, one of the questions that might occur is, why do we have to go away and have to set up an additional OAuth 2 application? Well, we have to do that because actually we aren't the CRM server talking to the Exchange server, as in Exchange integration. This is taking place from a user's account, and the user has to be able to authorize the interaction, and the application has to be set up within inside the Azure server to allow the CRM instance to be able to act on that, or the user to be able to get access through this. So there's a couple of layers of authentication that takes place here. So I'm going to go through how a system administrator would experience that. You have to start off with their help center. You have to go across then into the system. And I'm going to come down into the correct guide. So 2022 R2, down into the system administration help, and open that up. The reason I've come into here is because it's going to take me off into this question of how do I go ahead and set up the whole idea of importing contacts and email messages from Exchange Online. And it talks through the steps that have to be taken. And those steps include getting the OAuth 2 client ID and secret for Azure Active Directory. Now, the documentation is very good on here. So if we click in here, we can see what this is, and we can go off then as we follow through down to we log on to our own Outlook, etc. Except that if we want to get hold of this in order to set it up, we have to go off to the Azure Active Directory Admin Center, and this is where I would be logging on as somebody within inside this environment. So these are the setup screens that we come into. So this is the admin center, and what you need to do as you follow the instructions, you will eventually go on and to register an application. When you come to registering an application, that's great, but within the context of the registration of the application, which is fine and dandy, you're going to generate a client secret. Now, within the context of the client secret, there is the application ID, that one thing, which is great, but the other thing is the client secret. Now, this is one thing that we have experienced through our QA process and the beta testing and the initial test releases that we've done, is that people get confused as to what values they need to copy. And so the secret is only available as it's being set up. You've got two things. You've got the value, which is the visible placeholder for it, and then the secret beyond it. But it's only the value that you see as it's initially created, because if you don't grab it there and then where it says copy to clipboard, you've lost it, and you will not be able to see what that is once more. So this is where you've obviously got the client ID, which is the very visible, doesn't change, and then the secret, which has to be copied in when you're looking at the secret as it's being created. So the system administrators can't create it and then go away and come back and get it another time. When they're also working with this, you also have to go and build the settings for the permission for this particular application once it's registered, and you have to go through and say what API permissions are being used. This is not like the experience that customers will have had with basic authentication, because basic authentication essentially says, I am this user, I am accessing the site, I have complete authority, it is me who's logging on. What this is delegated permissions for a particular period of time, because even the secrets expire after a period of time. I think the maximum that you can set up is a year. So do we have any questions?
So every year they have to reset this up if that secret expires?
Yes.
Right.
How does it?
And
sorry.
There's not a workaround around that, because that comes from the security thing that the secrets expire.
When the secret does expire, Jeff, in the software, does it have any kind of messaging at all?
Yes. Yes, it will come up as a surfaced message indicating that the credentials are no longer valid.
Awesome.
I think it actually defaults to about 3 months, doesn't it? It's not even, I think you have to change it to make it longer, don't you?
That's correct. So you do have to pay attention as to how long you're setting the secret to last for. So the expiry date of that. Okay. Carrying on. The user will experience it through the interface very simply. Then the experience for the user is straightforward. The user will log on, navigate into their preferences page. Within preferences, you'll see the option. Well, the option won't appear until it has been set up, but actually once it is set up, once that ability to so once CRM is set up as working with the Exchange online, you will see the user has the ability then to connect to the email account, and the option there will be to actually connect. And once you see this, this prompt will call up a standard Windows or rather Exchange prompt to say, are you authorizing this application? And once the authorization has occurred, the user can then carry on and use the features, all of the features that would then be available, the buttons. So, for example, the import contacts button will be available. Now, we've put add contact here because it's a screen that people are familiar with, but the records won't show into here because it's still really to do with Exchange integration. But we've added in the import button, in this import contacts button onto the contact screen. And when that button is pressed, it looks up into the Exchange contacts list for all those contacts that have a company associated with them. So it's not going to be private contacts within your Exchange contacts list. It is going to be those people that you've put more than simply their email address in. So it's contact. Company will be listed there. If the company is known or registered, if the company is completed, you will see it listed out here. And you will then have the option to import. Like the Outlook plugin before it, and we went for similar behavior, we only allow for the individual importation of one person at a time. This is imagined as an ad hoc task. If it was a batch task, then all of those contacts would have been exported from Exchange and imported as contacts using the standard import feature. So this is a ad hoc task that we're carrying out here. So imagine I click to import somebody and the contact will be registered as imported. Now, importantly, if the contact company matches a company inside CRM, that contact will be imported as a person for that company. If the company name is not known, that contact will be imported as a lead, and you can hyperlink from the screen to be able to jump across into the lead that is created. So you can look at the lead that has been imported. You can see that and this is the lead summary, you could then examine to decide what you want to do with that person. So we can now, from here, we'd have to close this because this doesn't have any of the other buttons around here. But so this is only just to allow you to examine what's going on. You can then go and work with those leads just like any other lead. And you can see that they are all marked clearly as imported from email contacts. So any of the descriptions, they're very easy to find and include in, for example, dynamic groups, which are then linked into behavior such as mailings and integrations with call lists, for example. We've imported a contact as a lead. If the lead, as we work with it, is processed, well, you can work away with it in any way that you like. So you can eventually promote it into being a company. And if you want to then carry out another importation, so we're back on the importation screen here, carry out an importation this time where the company name is known inside the system. This time the person is going to be added as a person and not a lead. So they go into the existing company. The importation is only of leads and persons here. We may find that there is some enhancement requests that come in. I would be very welcome to the idea of suggestions on how this can be developed and fitted around people's needs. Okay, but that person can then be worked in the way that we want them to work. Okay, imagine we're now in a company and we want to work with emails. You'll see if you're working on an email on a company screen, and this is true for company, person, and opportunities. These are the three entities that are governed by the new import emails feature. So cases aren't included, other things aren't included either. But the context is company, persons, and opportunities. Other entities will be added in 2023 R1. So when you do an import of an email in the context, you will see there is a button. Now, this is probably the most profound change for customers moving from the Outlook plugin way of working through to the new way of working. So the Outlook plugin way of working is where people's life is Outlook centric, that they are working inside Outlook and they then take actions using the CRM plugin to look up into CRM to file the email or to add a user into CRM. But here the working paradigm is different. It assumes that you're working in CRM and you now want to look out and up to the email box to fetch records that need to be added to this context. So when we import the emails, we see all of the emails that are in our box, in our email folder. By default, it's the inbox. And we can see the ability to change the email folder if necessary. And we can search for the emails, selecting multiple emails at the same time in order to then carry out the import. And you'll notice that we've got the ability to set the communication status. This is similar. We can say that actually we want this to be pending, completed, whatever, as we do this, and we can file it. By default, it's email in, but if we wanted to, we could say actually this is a special type of communication action that we need to do. For example, renewals, contract renewals, or something like that. We want to put it in. And when we import it, we get a notification to say we've done this task. 2 mails are imported, and we then see those listed in the context here. The emails can contain embedded images and attachments as well. So you can see that those are carried through as well into the system. And you can then access the emails that we've imported anytime into the future. Importing a single one, and you can see this one has an attachment to it. This one has an attachment. The advisories in here, we've created as part of the run-up to this a series of advisories. If you are on 2021 R1, you know that you're able to use OAuth 2 for your Exchange integration, your internal mail client, your advanced mail manager, but you would also be using the Outlook plugins. So imagine you're using Exchange integration, you would be using Outlook Lite as your Outlook plugin. And in that case, if you were to upgrade from 2021 R1 to 2022 R2, essentially you must understand that the plugins are not supported for 2022 R2. We've assumed that people will be uninstalling them from the clients. So actually going through the process of removing the Outlook plugin, uninstalling it. They may choose to try and keep it working, but we don't make any changes to the browsers. Nothing in our installation shield can look at what's going on in the browser. So it's their choice in terms of the design of their upgrade process. But that's likely to be the gotcha where people have got plugins still hanging around inside the browsers. We haven't tested it, and therefore it is not supported. We're not expecting anyone to try and come in to 2022 R2 that way. Imagine you're one user of CRM who logs on once or twice a month. Even the system administrator has really forgotten that you're there. You go in, you run a report, you occasionally do it, but you've got within your Outlook the Outlook plugin. The system has been upgraded from 2021 R2 to 2022 R2, and you decide to click the Outlook plugin to try and do something. Well, the Outlook plugin will make calls to CRM. So the endpoints will be there, but we're not doing anything to stop the Outlook plugins making calls. There may be some functionality which will continue to work, but it's probably not going to work if they're going to attempt to do stuff. The position is we're assuming that the partners will have instructed the customers to remove the plugin from the client machines. Although this might be an initial pain, in the long term, because there is no client installation, there is nothing to support. So it is part of our simplification strategy. Because of those changes, we've also had some other changes within the product as well. So there have been the REST changes. And what we've done is we've extended the upload or file upload endpoint, and to allow that service to bring a file into a named target folder. This is something that we have been asked for by partners several times. The idea of being able to not only upload a file, but upload it into a named target folder. We had added in the, upload it into a temporary folder, and then have a routine running on the server to move it to the correct location. Now we can specify the target. And we've also provided an updated Postman collection, which demonstrates its use as well. So you can see here, I'm uploading a PowerPoint into a target location for a particular company. And you can see that there it's returned with a 200 message indicating that that file was successfully imported. Please note, if anyone is doing and using the REST API with files, it is only, you could select multiple files. The hidden file upload allows for multiple files to be added theoretically, but only the first would be taken. So it's something that has to be called again and again and again if people are uploading multiple files. So we've updated in terms of documentation for the product. Everything is up on the Help Center. The videos that we create to help users have all been updated as well. They've been rebranded. So what types of documentation has been updated? Well, just about everything has been revised. Even the implementation guide has now been revised for 2022 as well. And there's a good what's new section, release guide, the user guide, and help have obviously been updated. The administration guide has been updated, and the developer guide and REST documentation has been updated as well. You can only upgrade from the versions of Sage CRM on this chart. They're the only supported pathways. You have to, the users must log on between each step. If you're doing a long chain, if you're on a version earlier than that, then we have provided some additional guidance on long tail upgrades. And there are some videos now up on the YouTube channel. This is the training and support YouTube channel that I would refer you to as well if you are coming from a version earlier than 2019. We, as part of the documentation review, we collated information about different systems to look at the sizing recommendations that we would make. We looked at systems, and for this actually we got a lot of data from Sage South Africa in terms of data sizing and performance in order to come back with a set of recommendations that aligned ourselves with specifically the Sage 300 marketplace, which talks about small, medium and large systems. Here for Sage CRM, we've adopted that as well. So we now talk about small, medium, large systems. Essentially, that's not saying anything about the sophistication of the users or even the intensity of use, but it is really just about database size. So we've made some additional server hardware recommendations for Sage CRM 2022 R2 onwards. We've publicized the changes to supported software. So for 2022 R2, we've added support for Windows Server, which is which has been asked for a lot, because we've had availability for Windows Server for a little while, but it missed the development slot for 2022 R1. The Microsoft SQL database web edition support is very important for customers who are working with partners in alignment with service providers. So people who have the ability to provide access to web edition. It is another one of these changes that we've done in order to drive down the total cost of ownership. We've updated the support for SQL Server 19 and 17, and you can see there that we have messaged that we have dropped the Outlook Classic and Outlook Lite plugins. In terms of additional thoughts, you may the two things that I would encourage you to look at is on Sage City, is that there's an article on user interface improvements about the Outlook plugin replacement, which talks about essentially what we're doing, why we're doing it in technical terms. And as you read through and come to the bottom, is that there are some FAQs. So if people are saying, what's going to happen? So here it says, Sage CRM 2022 does not use plugins. Talks to do that. Importantly, it's not going to affect somebody who's using 2021. So they may be hearing, we've ended support for the plugins. We've only ended the support for the plugins from 2020 and R2 onwards. So they're still supported in the context of all other supported versions of Sage CRM.
Right.
It hasn't stopped features like the drag and drop. So if somebody's working with Outlook, they can still drag and drop from Outlook into the communications tab in CRM. And if they want to keep working within Outlook, we've got one customer, we've got one business partner, ISV CRM Together, who has a product that allows them to keep working with essentially a add-on into Outlook. So customers, by the time they come to upgrade, will have the choice of how to carry on working if they want to in an Outlook-centric way. The other article contains the guidance on so a little bit about terminology, because I talked about throughout our presentation OAuth 2. Microsoft actually calls it modern authentication. It clarifies as well what happens if somebody is using on-premise. So on-premise users, this isn't impacted by the dropping of support for basic authentication. Exchange Online customers, and that's Exchange 365 and any other managed exchange that Microsoft provides, will only work with OAuth 2. And that's a Microsoft change. We can't work with we can't work with hybrid modern authentication yet. But if you are using an on-premise version, you can keep using Exchange on-premise. Thank you. I hope that was a useful session for you.